right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back from April break. We're starting our new unit today. The last unit of the year is War and Revolution. Today is going to be very simple. I'm giving you a survey to fill out so you can kind of tell me what you already know about wars and revolutions, the ones that we'll cover, as well as letting me know if there's anything that you are interested in learning about. Normally, because this is the last quarter, it usually involves a big group project and in-class time to work on that, but that's not available. So we do have some extra time. So if there is anything you're interested in outside of the list that's on the survey, please make sure you include that. And I'll be happy to try and add it into our lessons as we continue with distance learning. So the unit is pretty simple. We are going to talk about the concept of absolutism, which I'll explain in a few minutes. But those are the rulers who basically do whatever they want, and how that type of ruling leads to revolution. We'll talk a lot about different revolutions that have happened throughout history. In particular, the French Revolution, the English Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the Chinese Communist Revolution. It is assumed that at this point in your educational career, you have talked about the American Revolution, but you feel free to ask questions if you need to. And then after revolutions, we will move on to wars. The wars that we're going to focus on are World War I and World War II. But again, it looks like we might have some more time, so we can do some modern wars. And if you have particular interest in any of those, again, just let me know on the survey that you fill out after this quick lecture. So the PowerPoint that is uploaded for you is called Absolute Monarchs. And this is the PowerPoint we're going to use for the next 4 lectures. So you're not going to get a new PowerPoint each time. You're going to go back to this PowerPoint, Absolute Monarchs. And for each class, a new lecture from me will be uploaded based on what we're learning. So today we're just covering absolutism. Again, it'll be very quick. And then next class we'll learn about Louis XIV. Following class, Henry VIII. And the class after that, Peter the Great. So they're all included within this PowerPoint. They each have their own slide, but their history is much bigger than that one slide. So that's why they'll fill a whole lecture. All right, so for absolutism, on the next slide, you see there are 3 definitions. So if you look at Britannica.com, absolutism is defined as the political doctrine and practice of unlimited centralized authority and absolute sovereignty as vested especially in a monarch or dictator, which is a lot of words. But if you'd like to hear my version of it, to make it very simple, the king or queen does whatever they want, whenever they want, and if you don't like it, too bad for you. Okay, if you need it even simpler than that, to explain the too bad for you, you have the quote from the Queen of Hearts, off with your head. Basically, with absolutism, the leader of the country, which we will be studying monarchs, kings, but it could also be dictators. But the leader of the country, basically whatever they say goes. Whatever rules they make have to be followed. And if you don't follow them, you will be killed or you'll be exiled, meaning you're forced to leave the country for the rest of your life. You will see through our series of lectures that absolute monarchs, when they are in power, they usually do not have to suffer any of the consequences of absolutism. And that's for a very simple reason. You get an absolute monarch because they have a lot of money and power, but what tends to happen is as they rule, they use a lot of that money to maintain their power, and over time, that money gets lost. By over time, we don't mean during the rule of that person. We usually mean in following generations. So for the most part, it's usually like a 3 to 4 generation difference. So if your great-grandparent was the absolute monarch of your country, there's a good chance that you, as the new monarch of the country, are dealing with the extreme after effects of political denial, of economic failure, and that's when you see a revolution happening. On the next slide, you see a very famous quote by Lord Acton in 1887 that many of you have probably already heard before. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And again, he's talking about absolutism. So power tends to corrupt, meaning once you are put in charge of something, you tend to start thinking that you are more important than everyone else. Some people are very good at having power, other people are not. And some people, even when they are trying their best, do little things that wouldn't be considered good. So, for example, if you are the one who is in charge of the bake sale, and you have organized where everyone is going to go and made all the signs and set up all the posters and did all the advertising, and then it comes the day of the tag sale, not tag sale, day of the bake sale, and you decide that because you've worked so hard, you should just get a free cupcake. That's not how that works. That is an example of power corrupting, because you are justifying why you are stealing from whatever fundraiser you are doing. The second part of the quote, absolute power corrupts absolutely, is saying when you have absolute power, when you have control over everything, you're guaranteed to be corrupted. There is no person in history who basically is given the ability to choose whether or not people live or die, who don't fall victim to corruption. So that's going to be the main topic of our three monarchs that we're going to learn about. Again, Louis XIV, Henry VIII, and Peter the Great. And we'll talk about their ambitions and what they wanted for the country, and then how it will all go wrong. Not necessarily for them, because again, the absolute monarchs usually don't deal with the consequences of their ruling. Their relations later on will deal with the consequences. But that's absolutism. You're probably hearing a little bit about it in the news right now, because there is a big argument on whether or not the president has the power to open up the basically the government and the nation, or is it the governor's powers? And you'll hear, does he have the absolute power? That is what they're talking about. He does not. Your governors decide whether or not their states are open. It's called federalism. It's our country's main tenet. But that's just a real life example of what's happening right now in terms of where you would hear that word absolute monarchy or absolute power. Okay? All right, so again, very simple day today. Hopefully you know what absolutism means now. And I need you to take that survey and let me know if there are things you want to learn about, or things you are interested in learning about. All right, and I will see you next class.